How is everyone tonight? Okay, that sounds pretty positive. Everybody was nodding, yes, good. Well, most of you know me. I'm John Hoffer with the NHP Foundation. And the reason for this meeting is to explain the notices that went out. You all received a cover letter, for a TOPA notice. Everyone should have received either a certified mailing or a notice of a certified mailing.
I didn't even get no notice.
And so if you haven't received it, it will be coming because every resident who is here had a mailing that was entered into the post office by certified mail. And we've got a record of that. So if you haven't received it yet, you should receive it. I'm kind of surprised that everybody hasn't received at least a notice of an attempt at it. But so I wanted to explain what that notice is. It's a requirement under the TOPA law, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act law. Then you also would have all received what's called a GIN notice. That's a requirement of, I believe a federal requirement for any relocation under the, is it Universal Relocation Act? Universal Relocation Act. And because there will be temporary relocation during the construction, we needed to send those notices out, and we'll explain that. And there's somebody from Housing to Home here who's an expert on that, can explain that better than I can. So I'm going to start just by telling you about the TOPA notice. When we, along with the Tenant Association and Change All Souls, acquired the Clark Corporation's ownership interest back in 2017, we entered into an agreement with the Tenant Association for the way that we would partner together, and that agreement anticipated this day, basically. It anticipated that as soon as we could, we would refinance the property to renovate the property. And so this TOPA notice is part of that process. We're at that point where we're about ready to be able to pull together all the financing and close on that recapitalization. It's still about 3 months away. So the anticipated closing date for that, and then construction would start shortly after, is October 25th of this year. Actual construction in the apartments won't start until approximately January 25th in the garden apartments, and then almost March 20th in the high-rise apartments. And the reason it'll take so much time between that closing date on the financing, which remember is October 25th, and the start of construction in your apartments is because there's a long lead time necessary now to get materials here, in part because of COVID supply chain issues. But anyway, that's the schedule. The last meeting that I had with everybody to go over this, it hasn't, the start dates in the units hasn't changed. We didn't have a date that by when we were going to close on the financing, but we've got that now. So you will have received, or you will soon receive, this notice package. It's about 30 pages long. You may have seen it posted in different areas around the property. This notice is required under the District of Columbia's Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, so it's a legal requirement. I apologize, it's very long. It's full with lots of legal jargon that's just necessary under TOPA. But in short, a couple of things to remember, or to know, I guess a better way to put it. Number one, you don't have to do anything about this notice. You don't even have to pick it up. But I would encourage you to take a look at it, because it's your right as residents. You have certain rights under TOPA. We have an obligation under TOPA to notify you all that there is going to be a transfer of ownership interests required for the financing. So, what does that mean? First of all, the owners in Columbia Heights Village right now, today, are the NHP Foundation, the Tenant Association, and Change All Souls Housing Corporation, plus 2 investor partners that are just silent. There are 2 funds by the Enterprise Foundation, or Enterprise Community Partners. The transfer that is going to raise money for the renovation is going to change the ownership in this way. There'll be 2 new investor partners. The Enterprise Foundation partners who provided equity in 2017 so that we could buy out Clark's interests, they'll be replaced by 2 new tax credit partners. And their investment is for the tax credits. They're buying tax credits. They're not buying the real estate. They aren't going to have an interest in owning the property or changing anything. They technically will have an ownership because they have to get the tax credits, but they're real estate tax credit investors. And so that's what they're buying. So from your perspective, what you see and what you experience after this transfer of ownership interest that is you're being notified of in this TOPA notice, nothing will change. The NHP Foundation currently is the managing member of the ownership and will be the managing member afterwards. The NHP Foundation will have a right at the end of the tax credit period, which is 15 years down the road, to buy out those investor members' interests at basically no cost other than their tax liability. So, and we'll share that with the Tenant Association and with Change All Souls. So even 15 years down the road, ownership will be the same. There is I've been told there's a rumor that part of the relocation that's necessary because of the construction is going to result in people being moved out, and you'll never be able to move back in. That's just not true. First of all, we couldn't do that legally, but we wouldn't want to do that. That's not our mission as a nonprofit who's in the business of creating and renovating and providing affordable housing. And you've heard me say that when I first came in front of you guys was in 2016, before we bought the Clark interest. So you've heard me say that consistently for 6 years. So nothing has changed. You do have certain rights. If you object to the transfer of ownership interests, you need to tell the tenant association that you do so. Under the TOPA law, any objection needs to be filed by the tenant association. So go ahead, read through the TOPA notice or ignore it if you feel like it. But that's what it's all about. This is something that was anticipated back in 2017. In our conversations with you in the last 2 years, we've talked about a renovation, which is going to require about $66 million of money just for construction, and that we would need to do, we would only be able to do that when we could refinance the property, and that's what this is all about. We're ready to bring in those new equity partners that have tax credit money that can finance this renovation. So before turning this over to talk about the GIN notices, I wanted to see if you guys have any questions about this TOPA notice, what you need to do, if you have any fears or concerns about it. Now is a good time to let me know.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
About the transfer thing, we need to tell the tenant association that we are not for it. Is that what you're saying?
No, if I'm not saying you need to tell them that. The question was, do you need to tell the tenant association you're not for the transfer? If you object to the transfer, if you don't want the renovation to go forward, or whatever, you have a reason to object to the transfer, then you should tell the tenant association your objection, because they're your representative if there's going to be an objection made to under the TOPA law. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So how do we do that as a group, or are they going to send out a form, or how
Well,
is that going to work?
I think what you do is you would, the question is, how would you do that? As a group, or will there be a form sent out? No, I think what you would do is you would put your objection in writing and send it to the tenant association. If you don't mind, I'd like for you to copy me too, but you don't have to. And then the tenant association will look at those objections to the extent there are any. But the reason that you have to do this to the tenant association is that under the District of Columbia TOPA Act, under the law, they are your representative, and only they can file if there's an objection. Only they can make that objection.
And that is within 45 days of the time the letter is received, or the notification? What period of time? What period of time do the residents have to respond to that?
I'm not your counsel, so I don't know exactly, but I believe it's 90 days. There's certain things that have to happen, and a lot of that is laid out in this TOPA notice. Well, you definitely will get it, or if you want a copy and you don't have it, you can. They're posted. Are they still up? They're still posted. If you want a separate copy, I think we could just have you ask management. We'll make sure they are able to copy it off for you. But this is, again, this is something that has been anticipated. It's not something new. We always said we needed to refinance the property in order to do the renovation. And the way that we refinance it includes some debt from that's issued by bonds, basically issued by DC HFA, the DC Housing Finance Agency, and that then allows for the tax credits that will bring in the tax credit investors. So, well, this is, it's just a lot of legalese in here, which is very difficult to get through. It's not a new thing. Any other questions? We've got a question back here, but I can't hear her, so. Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to repeat the question. What percentage of residents do you have to make an objection that could prevent the investors from coming into the partnership? And if that is prevented, would the renovation still go on? Would it be stopped, or could it go on at a lower level? You know, something less. I believe that ordinance requires a majority of the residents through the tenant association to make that objection, if there is one. And if there is an objection, it would stop the renovation. And could we do something else? Yeah, we maybe could, but it would be extremely costly, because we have a requirement, the ownership does, to pay off about $94 million of financing that is due in November. And if we don't have this new financing available, there'll be huge penalties and costs associated with that. That would then take away from money that would otherwise be available for the renovation. So then I'm going to turn this over to Homes for Housing to talk about the GIN notices. And a gentleman named Lee Perry, who's here with Homes for Housing. Just before I give the microphone over to Lee, or Mr. Perry, I just want to again emphasize the relocation is going to be temporary. It will be about 2.5 to 3 months. The schedule calls for 2.5 months out of your apartment and then back into the apartment after 2.5 months. We've got a total of 3 months available, so that gives us 2.5 months for everybody out of the apartment, and about a week to get you ready to move out, and about a week to get you back in afterwards, back into your renovated apartment. So the townhouse residents are not going to, as of now, I'm relatively certain the townhouse residents, there are 7 townhouse units that are big units. Those townhouse units are not going to have to move out for the renovation, because as we've done more engineering, the big systems that are disruptive, that would have to be removed, they just don't need to be removed in the townhouse, because they were renovated, or they were either renovated more recently, or they just haven't had the same kind of wear and tear. So some of those big systems in the townhouse that effectively shut down the unit aren't going to have to be done. So those 7 units, it looks like we won't have to move them out, the residents of those units out at all. But so for those of you who are here in the townhouses, I know you had some questions about that, because how on earth were we going to figure out how to relocate folks in? I think we have one 7-bedroom unit, so that was going to be quite a challenge, and a 6-bedroom unit, etc. So is 6 the maximum? Is that what you just said? Okay, sorry, one 6-bedroom unit. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Perry to talk about the GIN notices right after I take this lady's question.
You said that the townhouses won't be moving out because what you have to do, and I'm in the townhouse in the 6 bedroom. So we won't have to leave out and you can work around everything that's going on. in
That's
the home.
correct. We won't have to pull out all the water and plumbing out of those units because it's in good condition. I don't mean the fixtures and the stuff that you see in the units. I mean the stuff in the walls.
Who said that?
The architect and the engineers. We've hired a mechanical engineer and a plumbing engineer. We also ran cameras through the lines.
Okay.
We also brought out a team that did an ultrasound testing of all of the plumbing, and that could measure the diameter. You know, as pipes age and water flows through them, the pipe casing starts to get thinner and thinner, and it begins to sprout leaks. So the only way we can figure this out by looking behind the walls is to run this ultrasound. So it's kind of beyond me to understand the science behind it, but they can actually measure the diameter of the pipes. And the townhouses have good pipes.
I don't know about the good pipe, that's why I smell sewage.
That would be a whole different thing.
Oh, okay.
If you do, that would have to do with plumbing backups. So,
I have a plumbing backup in my unit.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, what unit are you in?
1351.
Okay, we'll check on it. I think that's that
It's
is
in the kitchen and in the
that's probably probably a management issue. So Evan, if you can, all right, Mr. Perry. Yes, sir.
If they don't have to move a townhouse, like why we have to move every garden farm, we don't have no issue at all, no problem issue.
It's not you and your unit, it's the building and the results of the test. And these financings, and we're talking about $66 million of renovation. These financing transactions are very difficult to put together. So when we do this, those pipes need to last at least another 15 years. The report that we got back says, tells us what we need to replace. And so we're just going off the science, basically.
I understand the plumbing from the kitchen back to the bathroom, but the big main sewer pipe, that pipe shouldn't have to be replaced, so that pipe stay warm, and ain't no way that pipe get cracked or do nothing.
You may be in a position where right where you live, it's not an issue, but I promise you that the tests that we've done and the results that have come back have indicated the scope of work that we're doing. And the investors, DCHFA, others are going to want us to do this scope of work because they're putting money in that needs to last for 15 years for the big building systems.
But John, can I ask, is there any way you can have a floor plan to show us what the 1 bedroom, 2 and 3 apartments look like once they're complete?
Yes. Oh, so the question was, and this is a little off topic, but that's fine. And the question, and it was a good question, can we give you a floor plan, or really more like a rendering of what the renovated apartments will look like? And we did that probably 6 or 7 months ago when we were outside. However, we will do new rendering. We'll have the architect do new 3-dimensional renderings to give you a look at what the units, the gardens of each different size, in the high-rise units in each different size, and the townhouses, what they'll look like after the renovation. And I'll see if we can get that put together. If not, in about 3 weeks to give to you, it would be right after that. You should get a microphone. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna let
I asked you whether I need to interpret immediately when you started. You said no.
oh,
So that's why I was not interpreting. I was waiting for you to call me to
Okay.
interpret.
all right. So, how do you want to proceed?
Well, as usual, as we did it last time, you
Okay.
speak and I interpret 2, 3 sentences, 4 sentences.
Okay.
And then I interpret. and
You know,
then you
I-
speak. That is the way we did it.
I think we're going to need to pick up with Housing for Homes, and we'll come back to your group afterwards. I'll give you the time
That's
necessary.
fine. Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces, so some of you met me already and spoke to me. With Housing Home, my name is Leo, and part of the Uniform Relocation Act that we have to pass out these GIN notifications. So whenever you get these at the door, it's just pretty much telling you to, let's see here, get the paperwork out. It's just telling you that you don't have to leave your apartment. It's letting you know that we're gonna start relocation next year, January 23rd. I mean, January, what's sorry? 25th. Did you wanna jump in? I'm trying to make sure I do this right. Okay.
እስካሁን ያላስተረጎምኩላችሁ ቆይ ስለተባልኩ ነው እና አሁን እሱ የተናገረውን አስተረጉማለሁ። ምንድን ነው ያለው? ማንኛችሁም የሆነ ወረቀት ደርሷችኋል በየቦታ በየአፓርትሜንታችሁ እና ያን ወረቀት በቋንቋችሁ ይተርጎምላችሁ አይተርጎምላችሁ አላውቅም፣ ግን እሱ ይሄን የቤት ማህበር አሁን በሚደረገው እድሳት ጊዜ እንዴት አድርጋችሁ ወደ ሌላ ቦታ ሄዳችሁ ተመልሳችሁ እንደምትመጡ ነው እና ማንም ሰው ወጥቶ አይቀርም። ነገር ግን ለ2 ወር ተኩል ወይም ለ3 ወር ተኩል ሌላ ቦታ ትኖራላችሁ። ይህ ከተደረገ በኋላ ተመልሳችሁ እዚሁ ነው የምትመጡት። ሌላው ነገር ይሄ እድሳት እንዳይሄድ እንግዲህ አዳዲስ ኢንቨስተሮች መጥተዋል እና እነሱ ይህንን እድሳት እንዲያካሄዱ ገንዘብ መገኘት ስላለበት አይ እድሳቱ መሄድ የለበትም እና እኛ እንቃወማለን የምትሉ ካላችሁ ተቃውሟችሁን ለተከራዮቹ ማህበር ማስገባት በጽሁፍ ትችላላችሁ ነው እና እድሳቱ ቢጀመር የዚህ ቤት እና ሌሎች ቤቶች አሉ መሰለኝ ግማሹ በማርች እና ግማሹ ደግሞ በወዚት ጃንዋሪ
January 25th, it's gonna start construction.
ጃንዋሪ 25 ይጀመራል ነው እንግዲህ አጠቃልዬ ነው የነገርኳችሁ እና ሌላ ጥያቄዎች ካሏችሁ ጠይቁ፣ እኔ አስተረጉማለሁ። እሺ።
So, like I said, the main thing of this gender notification is that you're not going to be displaced. It's just information letting you know the process that's going to happen soon, okay? So that's all it is. So if you haven't received one, you can always let me know. We've been setting up inside unit suite 100 over there in the corner. The information also has our phone number and email on there too, so you can contact us and let us know you haven't received it. I have a few copies here as well, so you can see me after the meeting. I can get that to you as well too, okay?
Okay. ደጋግሞ የሚናገረው ያንኑ ነው እና ወረቀቱ ያልደረሳችሁ ግን ካላችሁ ወረቀቱ እንዲደርሳችሁ እናደርጋለን ንገሩን ነው የሚለው እና ያው ነው በቃ ባጭሩ። እና ማንም ሰው ተመልሶ እዚህ ቦታ አይመለስም የሚል ወሬ ካለ ውሸት ነው። ተመልሳችሁ እዚህ ነው የምትመጡት ነው የሚለው።
And also too, if you don't get one from me or you didn't get one at your door, we're going to mail them out to the people we didn't have signed copies from. So if you haven't have a signed copy on my file, we're just going to mail you one to your door. Okay?
ስለዚህ ያልደረሳችሁ ካላችሁ ሜይል እናደርግላችኋለን ማለት ነው። ፖስታ ሳጥናችሁ ውስጥ እንልክላችኋለን ነው። Well, the lady over there is saying that she has not received the document.
Okay, she could come see me after the meeting, I'll get her a copy.
እሺ ከስብሰባው በኋላ ተመልሰሽ እኔን ጋር ነይና አናግሪኝ።
And then you have a question, Yellow?
Yes, sign and give it back to you.
Yes, you sign, give it back to me, and when you give it back to me, I have a copy and I'll give to you as well.
Okay, so I can come tomorrow?
I won't be here physically on site tomorrow. I'm only here a few days during the week, but if I'm not here, just drop it off to like Val and Robert them in the property management. I'll come grab it from when I come back on site.
Okay, do you know what side y'all can start on?
I don't have that information. It's more information that you probably talk to John and them on. And one last thing, if you don't sign, you don't have to sign, but we're going to mail them out to you if you don't sign. So we certify it, so we know that you definitely got one part of the relocation.
እና ከደረሳችሁ ሰነዱ ብትፈርሙበት እንደደረሳችሁ እናውቃለን። ግን የግድ መፈረም አለባችሁ ማለት አይደለም።
All right, I'm going to pass the microphone back to John, and he's going to answer more questions. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is there any way you could have a drop box? A secure drop box for those who aren't able to give it to you?
Um,
That only you all can open?
I mean, the document is not really need for security purpose, just saying that
Well,
we
I
gave
mean,
it to you.
if
but-
somebody gives a document, because in the past, people have put documents in places and they disappear. So people need to know that their document is safe. It's just like when you vote. If there's a little slot you put it in and you all come pick up the box, I think people would feel more comfortable.
Well, if you don't feel comfortable, let us know, call us an email, and we'll come get it from you. I mean, I'll walk the whole property already, drop them off, I'll walk right to you and come pick it up.
Why not just have a box in the rental office and we can drop the paper in that box?
We'll talk to management, we'll make sure that there's a lockbox in the rental office.
ኦኬ በኋላ እንነጋገርባታለን ነው የሚሉት አንዳንድ ጥያቄዎችን የዚህ የአማርኛ ቋንቋ ተናጋሪዎችን ጉዳይ በኋላ አነጋግራችኋለሁ ብለዋል ያ መጀመሪያ የተናገረው ሰውዬ።
So what time, y'all can start renovation on?
Okay, go ahead, please. They are complaining that the speaker is not loud enough for them.
Okay, did you translate to them already, or you need to repeat back to what I said? Or?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I wasn't sure, just making sure. I won't pass it.
No, I just wanna ask a question, why does it have to be January when it's cold? For us to be.
The question is, why does anybody have to move in January when it's cold? And the answer is because the construction process is going to take, from start to finish, is going to take about 2 years. And regardless of when we start, somebody's going to have to move in cold months, somebody's going to have to move in hot months, somebody's going to get September, the fall and the spring, and but it's just the way it works. Because as soon as we close, the interest clock is going to start, and we're going to have to pay interest, and you don't want to just pay interest, you want that money to go to construction. And there was a lady back here that had a question about which units are going to be the first, and it's units in the 2900, I'm sorry, that's here, the 2800 block will be first. We'll have an entire schedule, and that would be starting in January, about January 25th. We'll have an entire schedule, though, of all of the units that we can get out to you through Homes for Housing soon.
ጥያቄው ከጃንዋሪ ጀምሮ እንዴት ነው አወጣጡ የሚለው ከዚህ ህንፃ ሳይሆን የሚቀጥለው እዛ 2800 ነው እንደዚህ የሚባል አለ መሰለኝ። ከዛ ይጀምርና ቀስ እያለ ወደ ሌሎቹ ነው የሚመጣውና በአጠቃላይ የእድሳቱ ጊዜ ወደ 2 ዓመት ገደማ ሊወስድ እንደሚችል በአጠቃላይ ማለት ነው።
There was one more question over here, then. In yellow?
Okay, when you look out, some of us have children going to school. So are y'all, year, so really our kids can get to school?
So eventually, one of our team members will be on site, and they're gonna do what they call one-on-one assessments. They're gonna ask you all those questions, school district, disabilities, things like that. So when you speak to them, then you can tell them everything that you need and your concerns, and then we'll try to work around that, okay?
Okay.
All right.
There is a question here, sir.
This lady asked a question.
Okay, I'm letting them translate first, and then I'll
Over
go ahead.
here, there is a question.
Did you wanna translate that first, or?
I guess the
She asked, what about kids in school districts and things like that, and I told her that we're gonna have a one-on-one
እሷ
assessment.
የጠየቀችው ስለ ትምህርት ቤት እንግዲህ ስኩል ዲስትሪክት የሚባል አለ እዚህ ሀገር እና ስለሱ እንዴት ነው የሚሆነው እሱ ይታሰባል የሚል ጥያቄ ነው እና yeah okay but there is a question here ስለ ትምህርት ቤት ልጆች ላሏቸው ነው ይሄ እና የትምህርት ቤት ቅርበት ምናምን የሚጠይቁት ነገር ነው። ሰው ሲንቀሳቀስ ሌላ ቦታ ሲገባ ትምህርት እንዴት ይሆናል ይርቃል ወይ ቅርብ ነው ወይ የሚለውን ጥያቄ ነው። ይቅርታ ጥያቄሽ ምንድን ነበረ? ጥያቄው ምንድን ነበረ? አንድ ጥያቄ yeah but we understand that the construction, the renovation is going to take 2.5 months to 3 months. And I think you said something about 2.5 years. What does that mean? That's the question.
The whole process, including, sorry, the question was, what does it mean 2 years for construction? So what that means is the whole construction process, including everything on the exteriors, all of the common areas, and the apartments, plus the time needed to kind of ramp up the contractor to put up security fence, well, to put up safety fences in areas where construction is going on. That is going to take approximately 2 years from the start to the finish.
2 ዓመት በግምት ይፈጃል ብለን የምንናገረው አጠቃላይ ሁሉ ነገር እስኪጠናቀቅ ነው። የተባለው መሰረት ወደ አፓርትሜንታችሁ ትገባላችሁ፣ ግን የውጭ አለ የጋራ የሚባል ቦታ አለ፣ ሌሎችም ነገሮች የሚሰሩት እነዚህ ሁሉ አብረው እስኪሰሩ ድረስ ጊዜ ይፈጃል ለማለት ነው። 2 ዓመት ያልኩት ማለት ነው። So is it still true that after the renovation is finished between 2.5 months to 3 months that we come back to our units again?
Yes.
Oh,
Then I have one more question right here next. So she asked, do we know where we're gonna be relocating to? Right now, no, we don't. We're working on securing different locations and researching areas. And also too, when I said the one-on-one assessments, you telling me things about school districts and things like that, all goes in with that. So we have to figure all that out. So make sure you tell us all the information we ask for when we do the one-on-one assessments so we can place you correctly.
እዚህ ጋር የጠየቀች አንድ ሴትዮ ያለችው የጠየቀችው ምንድን ነው ወጣ ከዚህ የትኛው ቦታ ነው እንገባው የሚለውን ጥያቄ ነው የጠየቀችው እና እሱን እንደየ አመጣጡ ይሄ ቦታ አሁን ለማለት አይቻልም፣ ግን ወደፊት እናሳውቃችሁ ይሆናል። The question here. Well, she is showing me the TOPA document, and she says it is stated there is a transfer of property, and she is asking to how many people is the transfer going to be made? She is asking on the TOPA, the document that she has received, it says transfer of property somewhere. And she's asking how many people are going to get the property transferred to them.
It's not the question was how many people are going to get the property transferred to them. The property isn't going to be, the notice has a ton of legal language. A lot of it doesn't even apply to this situation, so.
እዚህ ማዘዋወር ጉዳይ አይደለም። ወረቀቱ እንደምታዩት ብዙ የህግ እንትን ያለበት ነው እና በቀላሉ ሊገባ የሚችል አይደለም እና ለሰዎች አይደለም የሚተላለፈው ይሄ ንብረት። ባለቤቶቹ አብዛኛዎቹ አንዳንድ ኢንቨስተሮች ይገቡበታል። ሌላ ነገር የለም።
And the transfer there won't be a transfer of property to individual residents. The property is already owned through a partnership with one of the partners being the tenant association, and that is going to stay in place just as it is now.
ንብረቱ የሚተላለፈው ለግለሰቦች አይደለም ወይም ለነዋሪዎቹ አይደለም። የእናንተ ማህበር አላችሁ። የእናንተ ማህበር የተከራዮች ማህበርና ሌሎች ኢንቨስተሮች አንድ ላይ ሆነው ንብረቱ ወደ እናንተ ተዘዋውሮ ማለት ወደ እናንተ ሲባል ከማህበራችሁ ጋር ማህበራችሁም ንብረት ውስጥ ይኖራል፣ ሌሎችም ይኖራሉ። እነሱ ሆነው በጋራ የሚያስተዳድሩት ነገር ነው የሚሆነው እንጂ ለግለሰቦች የሚሸጥ አይደለም።
Any more? This lady in the back, if you can, or with her arm up, can you get her question, sir?
Yeah, I have a question about the renovation. Now, way back we had a meeting.
Can you hold the mic? Give her the
Yeah,
microphone.
Okay, I have a question about the renovation. Way back, you said that we're gonna meet in small groups. We're gonna decide what the color of the floors would look like, what kind of floors, the appliances, what they would look like, what we would have a decision in how this would come about. And now you're saying, oh, we're gonna show you what it's gonna look like. I thought we were gonna be part of deciding what the apartment would look like, what the appliances would look like, the bathrooms, the kitchens, et cetera. And then another thing, some meeting way back, there was a cover of it showed what the garden apartments would look on the outside. And I noticed that the railings, the porch railings were gone, and it was just like a sheet of metal. Well, who decided that? What's wrong with our railings? They're very good.
I'm not.
Why are we gonna have this sheet of metal? And again,
I'm not sure what you mean, sheet of metal.
well, okay,
The privacy.
we had nice railings on our porches.
Yes.
And the picture that I saw, the railings were gone, and it was just like a sheet of metal. There were no railings. And who decided, like I said, we were supposed to meet and decide what the appliances would look like, the kinds of flooring, the color.
Okay.
And now you're saying, oh, here, we're gonna show you what it's gonna look like.
So.
Where is our input?
So the question is, sort of two questions. One is, she was asking why aren't we going to have lots more meetings with all of the residents giving individual input into the design? That's one question. And the other was she saw a picture of a rendering of the exteriors with the railings in the, I know what you're talking about, with the railings on the balconies or the patios that had metal sheets instead of the railing. So I'm going to I'll answer that second question first. Those metal sheets are no longer in the plan. We're going back with the railing similar to what it is now. That's correct, right? Okay, yeah. Yeah. But there'll be different railings so that those railings on the balconies conform with current code, and they're safer than what you have now. I think that they're just too far apart, the railings, so a little kid could slip through. So they'll conform with code, but that sheet metal that this lady was saying is terrible. She didn't like it. Our architects thought it was attractive. We didn't particularly like it either. We did get some feedback, and we're going back to railings. So
እሷ የጠየቀችው ምንድን ነበረ? መጀመሪያ ስትነግሩን ባለፉ ስብሰባዎች ቤቱ ምን አይነት ቀለም አፓርትሜንቶቹ እንደሚኖራቸው፣ ወጥ ቤቱ ምን ሊመስል እንደሚችል፣ ቀለም ምርጫ ላይ እንዲህ አይነቱ ነገር ላይ ትሳተፋላችሁ ብላችሁን ነበረ፣ ግን አላሳተፋችሁንም ካለች በኋላ እሷ ደግሞ እንደገና የምትኖረው ጋርደን አፓርትሜንትስ የሚባለው ውስጥ ነው መሰለኝ። ይሄ ደረጃ ላይ ያለው መደገፊያ ወይም መያዣ ዝም ብላችሁ ቆርቆሮ ነው ያደረጋችሁት እና እሱን አልወደድኩትም ስትል ጊዜ አይ እሱን እኛም በኋላ አስበንበት እንዲቀር አድርገናል፣ ሌላ ነው የሚደረገው ብሎ ነው መልስ የሰጣት።
So then the other question about design input by all of the residents, we have to do this as a group, because if we had every single resident trying to design the new, well, number one, whatever the design is, it has to be uniform. We can't have 406 custom designed apartments. That would be, well, it'd be impossible for us. If we were converting this to luxury condominiums, that would be a different story, but we're not doing that. So we have to come up with a design that is going to work for every unit. Some people are going to be more happy than others. Some people will be less happy than others. So what we're going to show you by way of sketch boards and examples, we're happy to get, and we want feedback in about 3 weeks on what the group likes and doesn't like of that, and there will be things like color selections, etc., that we would like your feedback, and we'll do the best we can to incorporate those types of changes, if there are any, that the group as a whole likes. If one person doesn't like something, the truth is we can't just cater to one person's desires.
ዲዛይንን በሚመለከት ቅድም ሴትዮዋ እንደጠየቀችው ተሳትፎ ታደርጋላችሁ የተባለ ስለተባለው አዎ ተሳትፎ ያደርጋላችሁ፣ ግን በአንድ ላይ ሆነን ተመሳሳይ ነገር ስምምነት መድረስ አለብን። እያንዳንዱ ዩኒት የራሱ የሆነ ቀለም የራሱ የሆነ የወጥ ቤት አይነት ሊኖረው አይችልም እና በስምምነት አንድ አይነት ቀለም ላይ ከደረስን በኋላ አብዛኛዎቻችሁ ወይ በስብሰባ ወይም ደግሞ ሀሳባችሁን እንድትገልጹልን በወረቀት እናደርግና ከዚያ በኋላ የምንወስነው ነገር ይሆናል ነው እንግዲህ ለእሷ ጥያቄ የመለሰችው ማለት ነው።
So I made a mistake. I messed up at the first of this when I was going over the TOPA notice. I went over all of it too fast, and I didn't give our Amharic translator a chance to translate. So I'm going to go over that again for the folks here who need to hear it through a translator. Everybody else is welcome to stay if you want, or if you want to leave, that's fine too. But I'm going to redo this now because I screwed up at first by just going too fast. So forgive me.
እጠይቃለሁ፣ ይቅርታ ተሳስቻለሁኝ። አማርኛ የሚናገሩ ሰዎች መኖራቸውን ዘንግቼ ዝም ብዬ ቀደም ብዬ በእንግሊዝኛ ተነጋግሬያለሁ፣ በአስተርጓሚው አልተጠቀምኩም። ስለዚህ አሁን ሌሎቻችሁ ሌላ ቋንቋ የምታውቁ ሰምታችኋል፣ መሄድ ትችላላችሁ። ግን አማርኛ የምትናገሩት ቆዩና አነጋግራችኋለሁ።
So, this is a TOPA notice to transfer, and it's something that was sent to every resident by certified mail. Even if you haven't yet received it, you should receive it. It was posted on on July 25th.
ይህ ወረቀት በእጁ ያዘውና ለእናንተ የተላከው ሰርቲፋይድ በሆነ ፖስታ ነውና መድረስ አለበት። እስካሁን ያልደረሳችሁ ካላችሁ ይደርሳችኋል፣ ጠብቁ። ለዚህ ነው እስካሁን ድረስ አንዳንዶቻችሁ ያልደረሳችሁ ልትኖሩ ትችላላችሁ።
This is because we are refinancing the property and bringing in new investors to replace the old investors. That involves a transfer of those investor owner interests, and under DC law, we're required to give a notice of transfer, and that's what this is.
ምንድነው ወረቀቱ? በአጠቃላይ ስለ የንብረት ባለቤትነት የኢንቨስተሮቹ ማለት ነው ዝውውርን በሚመለከት ነው። ከዚህ ቀደም የነበሩ ኢንቨስተሮች ነበሩ፣ እስካሁን ድረስ የነበሩ እነሱ ይወጡና አሁን ሌሎች አዲስ ስለሚገቡ ነው። ስለዛ የሚያወራ ሰነድ ነው ይሄ።
You don't have to do anything when you get this notice of transfer. You don't have to respond to it. You don't even have to pick it up or read it. However, it advises you of your rights under DC law. So I would encourage you to take a look at it, but it's nothing more than the formality of making this notification as required by law.
ሲደርሳችሁ ሰነዱ ልታነቡት ትችላላችሁ፣ ወስዳችሁ ዝም ብላችሁም ልታውት ትችላላችሁ። ያልፈለጋችሁት ከፖስታችሁም ላታውቱት ትችላላችሁ። ግዴታ የለባችሁም ማለት ነው። ግን ሰነዱ የሚነግራችሁ በዲሲ ሕግ መሰረት እናንተ እንደ ተከራዮች ምን አይነት መብት አላችሁ እሱን ለማወቅ ነው። እና ከተቻለ ብታዩት ደስ ይለናል በእኛ በኩል፣ ግን የግዴታ ነገር አይደለም ማለት ነው።
I apologize, it's very long. It's, I think, over 30 pages, and it's full of legalese, but it's required that we send it out in this form. So I'm sorry about all the legalese and the length of it.
በጣም ይቅርታ ጠይቃለሁ። ወረቀቱ ረዥም ነው፣ ወደ 30 ገጽ ያህል ያለው ነው። ግን አብዛኛው ዝም ብሎ የህግ ቋንቋ ያለበት ነውና ብዙም ለእናንተ ያላወቃችሁት እንትን የሚል አይደለም። ግን የግድ በህግ መሰረት መሰጠት ስላለበት ነው ለእናንተ ላክ ነው።
To summarize the main point of the notice, it lets you know that in order for us to do approximately $66 million of planned renovation, we need to bring in tax credit investors who are coming into the ownership purely for the interest of buying those tax credits.
እና ምንድነው ይሄንን እድሳት ለማካሄድ ወደ 66 ሚሊዮን ዶላር ይፈልጋል። ይሄንን ያህል ገንዘብ ለማግኘት ታክስ ክሬዲት ኮሌክተርስ የሚባሉ አሉ። እነሱ ገንዘቡ ስላላቸው እነሱን አብረን ልናስገባ አስበናል እንደ ኢንቨስተር ማለት ነው።
The owners now are comprised of the NHP Foundation, the Tenant Association, Change All Souls Housing Corporation, and 2 equity investors who came in to provide money to help us buy the Clark interests back in 2017. After the transaction, after this transfer of interest, the ownership will still have the NHP Foundation, the Tenant Association, and Change All Souls Housing Corporation in the partnership, but the old investors will be taken out and the new tax credit investors will come in.
እና ሲለወጥ ማለት ነው ኢንቨስተሮቹ እነ ኤንኤችኤ እና የዚህ የተከራዮች ማህበሩ እና ደግሞ አንድ ሌላ እነሱ የቆዩ ናቸው። ድሮም ያሉ አሁንም ይቆያሉ። ሌሎች ኢንቨስተሮች ግን የቀረቡ እነሱ ይወጡና እነዚህ ሌሎቹ ቅድም የተባለው ታክስ ክሬዲት ኮሌክተሮቹ እንዲገቡ ይደረጋል። ይሄ ነው ለውጡ።
And I didn't say this in the first time, so I should be a little clear that under DC law, this notice, there are certain transactions where owners have to notify the residents that they have an opportunity to purchase the property. This is not that kind of a notice. It doesn't meet the requirements for that kind of notice. It's simply a notification of transfer of interest to bring in those new investors.
በዲሲ ሕግ መሰረት ይሄ የተከራዮች የመግዛት መብት የሚባል ነገር አለ። ማለት ተከራዮቹ የሚችሉ ከሆነ በማህበራቸው አማካኝነት አፓርትሜንቱ እንዲገዙ ማለት ነው። ግን ቅድም አልተናገርኩትም ይሄንን። አሁን የምነግራችሁ ይሄኛ ለየት ያለ ነው። ይሄንን አያጠቃልልም። ቅድም እንዳልኳችሁ ብቻ አዳዲስ ኢንቨስተር አስገብተን እድሳቱን ማካሄድ ነው።
While you don't have to do anything, the tenants, through their representative, the Tenant Association, under DC law, do have a right to object to that transaction. But the only party that has that right is the Tenant Association. So if for some reason you object and you don't want the financing and the renovation as proposed, then you would need to make that objection to the Tenant Association.
ስለዚህ በተጠየቀው መሰረት አሁን በታሰበው መሰረት ይሄ እድሳት እንዳይካሄድ ከፈለጋችሁ እና አዳዲስ ሰዎችም ማለት ባለገንዘቦች ባለሀብቶች እንዲገቡበት እንዳሰብ ነው። ካልፈለጋችሁ የእናንተ የተከራዮች ማህበር ብቻ ነው ስልጣን ያለው ለመቃወም ይሄንን። ስለዚህ እናንተ እያንዳንዳችሁ ሀሳባችሁን በማህበራችሁ በኩል ትሰጡና አብዛኛዎቹ ይሄንን ነገር ከተቃወሙ ይሄ እድሳትና ይሄ የታሰበው ፕሮጀክት አይካሄድም ማለት ነው።
And that's basically it. Everybody will have as we talked about earlier, everybody who is temporarily relocated will have a right, will be able to move back into the renovated unit. There will be no permanent displacement. That's just that's not allowed. And we wouldn't want to do it anyway.
እንደተባለው ቅድም በዚህ ለእድሳቱ ከቀጠለ ለእድሳቱ ጊዜ ከቤታችሁ ለጊዜው ትወጡ ይደረግና ቅድም እንደተባለው ከ2 ወር ተኩል እስከ 3 ወር ለሚፈጅ ጊዜ ከዚያ ተመልሳችሁ ወደ ያላችሁበት ቦታ ነው የምትገቡት። ማንም ሰው እንዳይመለስ የሚደረግ የለም። ምክንያቱም ሕጉም ይከለክላልና እኛም ደግሞ የምናደርገው ነገር አይደለም።
So I'm going to answer some questions that were put in writing. I was told that if I didn't sign and date the GIN letter, that general information notice, that the renovation will stop. Is that true? And no, that's false. That's not true.
እሺ አንድ ጥያቄ በጽሁፍ የተሰጠውን ያነበበውና ጀን ሌተር የሚባለውን ካልፈረምን እድሳቱ አይካሄድም የሚል ነገር አለ። እውነት ነው ወይ ብሎ ነው ጥያቄው የቀረበው። አይ እውነት አይደለም፣ ውሸት ነው።
Will the townhouses receive adequate size and storage during the temporary relocation? I think we already discussed that because the townhouses as of now won't need to relocate. So I'm going to go to the next one. Will, somewhere in here, will other residents be given temporary storage? We're going to try to make sure that you are put into a unit that's comparable to your current unit. So you should have plenty of space in that unit. We're not going to be providing extra storage though.
መጀመሪያ ታውን ሀውሶች ያሉት እናንተንም ታውን ሀውስ ውስጥ የምትኖሩ ካላችሁ እዛ ያላችሁት ሰዎች መጀመሪያ ነገርም እድሳቱ ሲካሄድ እንድትለቁ አይደረግምና አይመለከታችሁም ማለት ነው። ምክንያቱም አንዳንድ ሰዎች እቃ የምናስቀምጥበት ስቶሬጅ አይነት ነገር ብለው ስላሰቡ ማለት ነው። ግን ሌሎቻችሁ በተቻለ መጠን ሌላ ቦታ ስንወስዳችሁ ለስቶሬጅ በቂ የሆነ ስፍራ እንዲኖራችሁ ጥረት እናደርጋለን ማለት ነው።
Will residents receive any monetary compensation during, before, or after the renovation? So I think what this was asking is, will we be paying? Will the ownership be paying individual residents some amount of money? And the answer is no. That I don't think that's allowed, but it would mess up your Section 8 if it was, potentially.
አንዱ ጥያቄ ደግሞ ምንድን ነው ይሄ እድሳት ሲካሄድ ወይም ከዛ በኋላ እነዚህ አዳሾቹ ማለት አዲሶቹ መዋለ ነዋይ ያስፈሰሱት ገንዘብ ለተከራዮቹ የሚከፍሉት ነገር አለ ወይ ጠየቃችሁ። ማን እንደጠየቀ አላውቅም። መልሱ ግን አይ እንዲህ አይነት ነገርማ የለም፣ የሚሰጥ ገንዘብ የለም።
And they said relocated funds should be made available. Well, relocation funds will be made available, but we're not going to be paying you like, $10,000 or something like that. But the cost of your relocation will be paid. So the moving charges, the charges for new to set up your electricity, and to reestablish services, those usually cost money just to set up. You won't have to pay for that. The service, if you have a service or you use electricity during that, and you will use electricity during that period, you'd have to pay just like you would here, but you're not going to have to pay for the cost of your move.
እዚህ ደግሞ ሌላው ጥያቄ ምንድን ነው? በምንዘዋወርበት ጊዜ ቅድም ገንዘብ ይሰጣል ለሚለው አይ ስንንቀሳቀስ ግን ለመንቀሳቀስ እና ተመልሶም ለመውጣት የሚደረገው ወጪ ማን ነው የሚሸፍነው ብለው የጠየቀ ሰው አለ። እሱማ እኛ ነን የምንሸፍነው። እዛ ስትሄዱ ለመንቀሳቀሻ ከገባችሁ በኋላ ኤሌክትሪክ ለማስቀጠያ፣ አንዳንድ አገልግሎቶች ለማስቀጠያ እንዲህ ያሉትን ወጪዎች የሚከፈለው በእኛ በኩል ነው የምንሸፍንላችሁ። ስትመለሱም ደግሞ ወደዚህ ለመግባት ደግሞ እኛ ነን የምንከፍላችሁ። ነገር ግን በየወሩ የሚከፈለውን ድሮም እዚህ እንደምትከፍሉት የምትሄዱት ቦታ በየወሩ ክፍያ መክፈል ትቀጥላላችሁ።
How will I be able to continue to pay my monthly rent during my transfer to the new location?
አዲሱ ቦታ ስዘዋወር ኪራይ እንዴት አድርጌ ነው ክፍያ መቀጠል የሚችለው ነው ጥያቄው።
It'll be the same as it is now after or during that transfer. So however you're paying it now and whatever your rent is based on now, which is for almost all of you, not every single one, but almost all of you qualify for Section 8. And so your rent is based on how much you earn. And that will remain the same through the transfer. If the apartments that we move you into cost more than the apartments here do, which I can pretty much guarantee is going to be the case, we pick up the difference. And you won't, it's just not going to be an issue. You won't pay any more or differently during that period.
ምንም አዲስ የምትከፍሉት ነገር ማለት አከፋፈል ዘዴ የለውም። እዚህ ልክ ኪራይ እንደምትከፍሉ እዛም ቢሆን ክፍያችሁን ትቀጥላላችሁ። አብዛኛዎቻችሁ ሴክሽን 8 ውስጥ ያላችሁ ናችሁ እና ክፍያችሁ የተመሰረተው በገበያችሁ መጠን ነው እና በዛው መሰረት እዛም ብትዘዋወሩ ተመልሳችሁም ስትመጡ ይኸው ነው የሚቀጥለው ማለት ነው። ችግር አያመጣም።
And I should also add that you will continue to pay your rent to Columbia Heights Village, and then Columbia Heights Village will be responsible to make that transfer of rent to the new landlord.
እና እስካሁን የምትከፍሉት ኮሎምቢያ ሃይትስ ቪሌጅ ለሚባለው ነው። ያ ኪራዩን ሰብስቦ ለአዳዲሶቹ ባለቤቶች የሚያስረክበው እዚያው ይቀጥላል ማለት ነው እና ምንም አዲስ ነገር የለውም።
How will we recertify if we were in another location? So during this and remember the relocation is only going to be about 2.5 months that you're going to be out, maybe 3 months. So if your income changes during that time and you need to, then you would need to recertify. And you'd need to recertify back here at Columbia Heights Village the same way you do now.
ሌላው ጥያቄ ምንድን ነው? እንደገና ማለት በየጊዜው ይገባቸዋል አይገባቸውም የሚባለው ሪሰርቲፊኬሽን የሚባል ነገር አለ። እሱን እንዴት እናደርጋለን በዚህ ጊዜያዊ የዝውውርና ወዲያ ወዲህ በምንልበት ጊዜ የሚለው እሱም ቢሆን ምንም አዲስ ነገር የለም። ለማንኛውም ከዚህ ወጣችሁ ቆይታችሁ የምትመለሱት ከሁለት ወር ተኩል እስከ 3 ወር ጊዜ ድረስ ከሆነ ይሄን ያህል ገቢ በለውጣችሁ ላይ ሊኖር አይችልም። ካለም ደግሞ ያው ድሮ እንደምታስታውቁት ሄዳችሁ ማስታወቅ ነው። ሌላ አዲስ ነገር የለም።
So that whole process of recertification, who you pay, how much you pay, that's all governed by HUD. So we have to follow HUD's requirements, and HUD will be following this process to make sure that we are doing that and to make sure that there's nothing bad going on.
ይሄ ሁሉ ሂደት የሚካሄደው እንደምታውቁት ሀድ የሚባለው አለ። የዚህ የቤት ጉዳይ የሚመለከተው ማለት ነው። የመንግስት መስሪያ ቤት የነሱን ስነ ስርዓት ተከትለን ነው ይሄ እንደገና ማደሱን ሪሰርቲፊኬሽኑን የምናካሄደው እና ምንም እሱ አዲስ ነገር የለውም ነው።
And I have 2 questions about technology and about information. If you don't have internet, you don't have a phone, you don't know how to use YouTube, how can you get information?
ስለ ቴክኖሎጂ አንድ ሁለት ማነሳው ነገር አለ። ለምሳሌ ስልክ፣ ኢንተርኔት ወይም ደግሞ ዩቲዩብ እንደዚህ በመሳሰለው መጠቀም የማትችሉ ከሆነ በምን መልክ መረጃ ታገኛላችሁ የሚለውን
as part of what Homes to Housing, I hope Housing to Homes, I get that wrong all the time. Housing to Homes, that's Mr. Perry's organization. As part of what they are doing, they've done an assessment of each of that residents and your technology capability and what you have. If you don't have any internet connectivity, then we'll have to figure out, and the short answer is I don't know exactly how we'll do that, but we'll have to work with Housing to Homes to figure out how to get you that information so that just because you don't have access technology, you don't miss out. And honestly, I'm not sure what the solution is, but it's a good and valid question, and we need to figure it out and let you guys know.
ስለ እንዴት ነው መረጃ የሚያገኙት ተከራዮች የሚለው ጥያቄ በጣም ጥሩ ነው በእውነቱ። ሃውሲንግ ሆም የሚባለው ድርጅት ከዚህ በፊት ግምገማ አካሂዷል እያንዳንዳችሁን የመረጃ እንዴት ልታገኙ እንደምትችሉ። አንዳንዶቻችሁ ኢንተርኔት የላችሁም ይሆናል እና ኢንተርኔት እንዴት ልታገኙ እንደምትችሉ አንዳንድ እርምጃዎች መውሰድ ይችላሉ። ይሄ ሃውሲንግ ማነው የተባለው ድርጅት እሱን እንዴት እናድርገው እንደሚያደርገው። በእኔ በኩል ግን እኔ እንዴት መፍትሄ እንደሚያገኝ በበኩሌ አላውቅም፣ ግን ዋና ጥያቄ ነው።
So another question is, how will my internet, so this is somebody who currently has internet service, how will my internet service and phone service be transferred to my relocation so that I can continue to have my service at the new location? And that's something that Housing to Home is going to work with you to make sure that you don't lose that service, what you have now. So they'll make sure that happens.
አንዱ ጥያቄ ምንድን ነው? አሁን ኢንተርኔት ያለን ሰዎች እና ሌላ ቴክኖሎጂ ግንኙነት እናደርግ ያለን ሰዎች አሁን ያለንን ወደ ሌላ ቦታ ስንሄድ እንዴት አድርገን ነው ይዘነው የምንሄደው ወይም እዛ ቦታ ላይ እንዲዘዋወርልን የሚደረገው ነው ጥያቄው። እና ሃውሲንግ ሆም የሚባለው ድርጅት ነው ይሄን የሚመለከተው እና እያንዳንዳችሁን ሁኔታ አይቶ እንዴት እንደምታደርጉት የሚነግራችሁ ይሆናል ወደፊት።
Where will we pick up our mail when we relocate? I'm not sure about this, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think the way that you'll do it is you'll fill out a change of address with the post office and notify the post office of your new location, and your mail will be forwarded to your new location. Is that right? Well, what do you mean it takes too long?
The process is, yeah.
We can have temporary mailboxes set up on the application.
We'll figure out a system to get you guys set up with your mail back and forth. So before we, okay.
Why you can't put the mailbox in the middle, right there, in the middle of where the ones over there, in the garden apartment? You can take the mailboxes and put them on the inside with the fence at, right there with that little fence. People won't be in nobody's way. They
We
can
can
come
take
and
that.
get their mail there.
So, what I'm getting is, there's a request that we set up temporary mail here. So, but that would require you to come back here to get your mail. And so, hang on. I think I would still encourage you to do that change of address. Now, let me finish. For those of you who don't want to have to come back all the time, those of you who don't trust that process, we'll talk to the contractor and the architect about setting up. Well, we probably also have to talk to the post office, and I know we do, about setting up temporary mail here and keeping this in place as long as we can during the process.
ስለዚህ በአጭሩ ምንድን ነው ጥያቄ አሁን የተነሳው እዛ ደብዳቤ ወይም ፖስታ እንዴት ነው የምናገኘው ስንዘዋወር ብለው ቢጠይቁ የአድራሻ ለውጥ ማድረግ አለባችሁ ከፖስታ ቤት ጋር በሚደረገው መሰረት ነው። ግን ያ ጊዜ ይፈጃል አሉ ሌሎቹ ሰዎች እና እዚህ ጊዜያዊ እዚህ ድረስ እየመጣን እንድንወስድ ለጊዜው ሊደረግልን አይችልም ወይ ለሚለው ደግሞ እስቲ እሱን ነገሩን አይተን የምናደርገው ሊሆን እንዴት እንደምናደርግ እንወስንበታለን ነው። There is a question over here.
Let me finish up real quick with one last thought. It's clear from this meeting that there are a lot of you who don't like the idea of having your mail transferred to the new place. And so I just want to make sure you know we're not just going to ignore that and go, yeah. We know what's best for you. I hear that. I understand it, and we'll do everything we can to create a temporary facility here for you. I think that's possible. I don't know for sure. I've got to find out, and we'll let you know. But I'm not going to ignore your complaints because you're pretty loud about it. It's like,
ጊዜያዊ
no, that's
ፖስታ
a stupid idea.
እዚሁ ይደረግልን ጊዜያዊ እንዳይለወጥ የሚለውን ጉዳይ እኛ ዝም ብለን እሺ ብለን የምንተወው ነገር አይደለም። በደንብ ገብተን የምንመለከተው ነገር ይሆናል እና እንዲያው እንደተውናችሁ አይነት ነገር አትቁጠሩት። ይቻላል አይቻልም የሚለውን እርግጠኛ አይደለንም፣ ግን የሚቻል ከሆነ ጊዜያዊ የፖስታችሁን እዚሁ እያላችሁ እዚህ እየመጣችሁ እንድትወስዱ ማድረግ ይቻላል። There is a question over here. Do you want to accept it?
Yes.
The question is, a lady here asked, does that mean where we are going, there is not going to be any internet connection?
No, it does not.
አይኖርም ማለት አይደለም። ማን ነው የጠየቀኝ ስለ ኢንተርኔት? አይኖርም ማለት አይደለም፣ ማለት ይኖራል እንደማለት ነው። ገብቶሻል ነው ብለሽ? አዎ አይኖርም ወይ ብለሽ ነው የጠየቅሽው? አይ ይኖራል።
I was just told that, just as an add-on to I think what I've already said, housing to home, as part of the assessment questions that they'll continue, making, they'll figure out if you need your internet transferred to the new location, and they'll take care of that.
አሁን የተነገረው ሃውሲንግ ቱ ሆም የሚባለው ሰው እዛ ጋ ያለው ማለት ነው። እያንዳንዳችሁ እዚህ ውስጥ ኢንተርኔት ግንኙነት ያላችሁ ወደዛ እንዴት እንደሚዘዋወር አይተው የሚቻለውን ያደርጋሉ።
Okay, so this is a question about about washer dryer, and are they going to repair or not until we move? The laundry facilities. Well, first of all, if the question is, will you get washers and dryers in your units? The answer is no, because there isn't the space for it and the plumbing's not set up for it. If the question is, will the laundry rooms be renovated? The answer is yes, they will be renovated. And if washing machines are currently not working where you live, or dryers, then you need to let management know so they can make the request for the laundry company to repair the machines. And I can see from some reactions that you're not happy with the laundry service. So we'll be looking into with asset management, NHPF's asset management, and as a part of this process, if we can bring in a different, and if it makes sense to bring in a different laundry service.
የልብስ ማጠቢያ እና ማድረቂያን በሚመለከት እንዴት ነው ብሎ ጥያቄ የተነሳል። እያንዳንዳችሁ በያላችሁበት ዩኒት ውስጥ ይኖራል ብላችሁ አትጠብቁ። የጋራ የሆነ የላውንደሪ ቦታ ይኖራል። እዛ ሄዳችሁ ታጥባላችሁ። የምትዘዋወሩበትን ቦታ እንደዛ ነው የሚሆነው። ግን አሁን ላይ ገና እስክትዘዋወሩ የተበላሸባችሁ ካላችሁ ማድረቂያም ሆነ ማለት ላውንደሪያችሁ የጋራ የሆነው የተበላሸ ነገር ካለበት ለማኔጅመንት ትነግሩና እነሱ እድሳቱን እንዲያካሂዱላችሁ ማድረግ ይቻላል።
So this card has two questions. One has to do with property management specifically, and it's basically a complaint about property management. But I'm going to tell you that's a whole different meeting. I know you had believe you had meetings earlier about property management. I know that property management is going to start meeting on a regular basis directly with you, the residents. I'm not directly involved in property management. I understand that you've got concerns, but the purpose of this meeting tonight, and I'm not minimizing your concerns, but I'm just telling you, I can only kind of deal with one thing at a time tonight, and the purpose of the meeting tonight is to go over these notices and questions about the renovation. And then the other question here, and I think I already covered it, was, I did, okay.
የንብረት አስተዳደርን
Real-
በሚመለከት አስተዳዳሪዎቹ በቂ የማስተዳደር ተግባር አያከናውኑም የሚል አቤቱታ አይነት ጥያቄ ነው የቀረበው። እንዲህ አይነቱ ጥያቄ ለእኔ እንኳን መቅረብ የለበትም። ምክንያቱም እኔ በቀጥታ እንዲህ አይነት ነገር ውስጥ ያለሁበት አይደለሁም። ግን ለፕሮፐርቲ ማኔጅሜንት ለሚባለው ጥያቄያችሁን አስገብታችሁ መልስ እንዲሰጧችሁ ነበር። ለምሳሌ ቀደም ብሎ ከአሁኑ ስብሰባ በፊት አንድ የሆነ ስብሰባ ነበርና እዛ ላይ የዚህ የፕሮፐርቲ ማኔጅሜንት ጉዳይ እየተወያዩበት ነበር።
If your follow-up questions about property management, talk to me after the meeting, okay? I figured it was. So I want to hear your question.
You wanna hear?
But after the meeting.
Okay, okay.
Are there new buildings being built on the parking lot? I don't know, is the short answer. Because that's a whole separate deal, and it requires a lot of new financing and financing from the District of Columbia. We've asked them for the amount of money that we think would be needed to build it, and we don't have a commitment from them yet, so we don't know if we can do that. But if we can, we would like to put more housing on the parking lot that wouldn't, and replace the parking with new structured parking. That's a whole other meeting that we talked about, I don't know, a month or two ago. And right now, there's no plan to do it because we don't have the money. If we can get the money, then we'll come back and talk to you again about it.
ጥያቄው ምንድን ነበረ? የመኪና ማቆሚያን በሚመለከት አሁን መኪና ማቆሚያው ላይ አዳዲስ ህንፃዎች ይሰራሉ ወይ ተጨማሪ ለሚለው ነው። ይሄን ጥያቄ አሁን ልመልስላችሁ አልችልም። ብዙ ገና አዳዲስ ገንዘብ ያስፈልጋል፣ ብዙ ንብረት አለ። ውሳኔውም ገና እንዲህ አይነት ነገር ስለሆነ የሚደረግ ነገር አይኖርም። መጀመሪያ ነገር ፈቃዱን መገኘት አለበት ከዲሲ መንግስት ማለት ነው።
And there was another question about this potential new building. Why can't you put us in the new building while renovation's being done here? And the answer is there is no new building yet, so there's no place to put you until, and if that building was built already, we could do it, but it's not there, so we can't.
አንዱ ጥያቄ ምንድን ነበረ? እኛ ይሄኛው ቤት እስኪታደስ ቤቶቹ እስኪታደሱ ድረስ አዲስ ህንፃ የሚሰራው ጋር ለምን አታስገቡንም የሚል ነው መልሱ። ቅድም እንደተናገረው አዲስ ህንፃ አሁን የሚሰራበት ምንም ሀሳብ የለንም እና ገና ሌላ ነገር ነው እሱ። ከዚህ ከአሁኑ ሁኔታ ጋር የተያያዘ ስላልሆነ የአዲስ ህንፃውን ነገር አሁን እንርሳው ነው።
So here are questions about how do we pay rent, and how do we come back, or how do we receive mail. I think I've already addressed those. I'm a resident, but the security made me give him a copy of my ID. Why? That's a policy issue, then that's a different question. So I think it's just a policy.
ቅድም
So
የተጠየቀ ጥያቄ ነበረ።
I'll get you.
ነዋሪ ነኝ እዚህ እና ሴኪሪቲ ስገባ የመታወቂያዬን ፎቶኮፒ አነሱብኝ። ለምንድን ነው የሚያነሱብኝ እንደዚህ አድርገው የሚል ጥያቄ አንስታ ነበር። የለችም አሁን እሷ።
Okay. Do you still have a question? Okay, all right.
But it's not, I'm not satisfied with it. Also, that I would like to know if the management office will stay here, so I can come here for the certification or to pay my rent during the time
Sure.
that we are outside.
Okay. So the question was, will the management office stay here during the renovation so rent can be paid here? And the answer is yes. That we're going to have to figure out how to do renovation around the management office, which for most of the renovation will be very easy. There will be a short period where the management office may have to break up and move to somewhere temporarily within the property, or even out in a trailer or something. But management will be here.
ማኔጅመንት
remain
ቢሮውን
here.
በሚመለከት ጥያቄ የቀረበው ማኔጅመንት ቢሮው ይቆያል ወይ እዚህ እድሳቱ ሲካሄድ? ስለዚህ እዚህ እየመጣን ኪራይ እንድንከፍል እንደወትሮ ምናምን ነው። በተቻለ መጠን ይቆያል እና ዙሪያውን እድሳቱን ለማካሄድ እንሞክራለን። ምናልባት እንዲንቀሳቀስ እንኳን ቢያስፈልግ ደጅ ትሬይለር ላይ ሆኖ ሊሆን ይችላል። ቢሮው ግን ከዚሁ አካባቢ አይጠፋም ምንጊዜም።
There are still cookies. But I have a question here.
When we move, would the Pepco be transferred to our new apartment?
Will you?
Because, if those apartments have electric, so we have to transfer our account to their apartment, right? Because, if they do that,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, if we have to do that, most times Pepco will see a lease. They need to see a lease for their new apartment. That's the only way they're gonna transfer it.
So we'll check into that, but we'll help you with the transfer of
Can you-
Pepco going back and forward.
Can you repeat the question?
Asking Pepco needs to see the lease when they transfer the utilities to the temporary location, then back.
አዎ ስለ ዝውውር የዚህ የመብራት የምናምን የሚከፈል ነገር ካለ እሱን ወደ አዲሱ ቦታ እንዴት ነው የሚዘዋወር የሚለውን ነገር ነው የጠየቀችው። ጥሩ ጥያቄ ነው አለ። እኛም የምንሰራው ነገር አለ፣ እንሰራለን።
The question is, I'm going to kind of reframe it or summarize it. You're worried that there may be difficulty in getting electric in your new place.
Transferring it, yes.
And especially if it requires transferring it. And I don't think it gets transferred. I think it's like it's a brand new electricity account.
You still got
But,
to lease.
but whatever it is, and we do these and I don't do it, so I don't have all the answers, the details. We do these relocations all the time without losing that utility service, and so we'll make sure that you don't lose your utilities. You can't go to a new place without utilities.
ጥያቄው ምንድን ነበር? እንዴ ስንዘዋወር የምንሄድበት ቦታ መብራት ምናምን እንደዚህ ነገር ባይኖርስ የሚል ነው። አይ ስለሱ ማሰብ የለባችሁም። እኛም መጀመሪያ ስናዘዋውራችሁ መኖሩን አረጋግጠን ነው። ግን እዚህ ያላችሁ የመብራት ወይንም እንደዚህ አይነት ነገር አካውንቱ ላይቀጥል ይችላል። እዛ እንደ አዲስ መቀጠል ያስፈልጋል እና ከዚያ ደግሞ እዚህ ስትመለሱ ወደ ድሮ መመለስ ያስፈልጋል።
Okay, I think if you still have questions that you think of afterwards, send them to me, J. Hoffer at NHP, by certified mail, no. Send them to me, J. Hoffer at nhpfoundation.org. Get them to Mr. Perry, who can try to get them to me, because the Homes for Housing folks will be around. We want to make sure your questions get answered.
ሌሎች ጥያቄዎች
And
ካላችሁ እንግዲህ አሁን ወደ መጨረሻው እየሄድን ስለሆነ በጽሁፍ ለዚህ ለጆን ፔሪ ልትሰጡ ትችላላችሁ እና እሱ ወይንም ደግሞ ለእኔም ልትልኩልኝ ትችላላችሁ። አድራሻውን እሱ ሊሰጣችሁ ይችላል።
So I want to thank you all for coming out. If you want to talk to me, I'll stick around for a while. I'll take your confession. I'll hear your complaints, or whatever. And but thank you.
ሁላችሁም ስለመጣችሁ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። በግለሰብ ልታነጋግሩኝ የምትፈልጉ ካላችሁ መጣችሁ ልታነጋግሩኝ ትችላላችሁ። ነገ ስብሰባው ግን አልቋል።